Hey everybody, I want to make a video showing you a little bit about tables, and I'm going to talk a little bit about design and how you can do a good job of making your tables, I don't want to say stand out, but look nice, basically. So let's get that started. So I've got a Word document open. I'm going to do this in Microsoft Word. You can do this in Google Docs. Google Docs has a nice table option as well, and most word processing programs do as well. I haven't used Sheets, which is the Mac program, but I would imagine they have something similar. They all work pretty much the same these days. So here I am in my Word document, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the styles in just a second. But for right now, I just want to show you how to make a table and talk about a little bit of the vocabulary that goes with those. So to make a table in Word, insert table. There's a few options here. They have a few pre-made tables here that use pretty good designs. I'm going to use one that looks sort of like this or this, and I'll show you why. You can go insert or draw. Draw is weird to me. I like doing insert table because it gives me, oh, actually, let me back up 1 second because I want to show you what I don't usually do. I don't usually use these because they always make the table go all the way across the screen, and I often don't want it to. I often want to move it around like a picture. So if you do insert table, you have the option to not do that. So I'm just going to make up some data here. So number of columns, I'm going to have what do I want? 5 columns, and I think I want 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows. Yeah, 6 rows, and I'll show you how I calculated those things. If you do fixed column width, you can choose between, you can make your columns a certain width if you want to. I usually don't do this. They set it on auto, which will go all the way across the paper. I like auto fit to contents, and then it'll just start me here. So let's see here. So I'm gonna do this: A through F, G through K, L through P, L, M, N, O, P, Q. No, let's go L through R, and then S through Z. All right, and then total. All right, so basically I have some sort of fake data I'm just going to make up here. Yeah, and so what you want is for a table like this, you want qualitative data. This is not really for quantitative. And I'll explain a little bit about where we're going to go with this in just a second, but tables are for qualitative data. So the vocabulary I want to go over are frequency, relative frequency, cumulative frequency, and cumulative relative frequency. Okay, so here's what those things mean. Frequency literally just means how many things fell into that category. So let's say I'm teaching a class that's got, let's say it has 36 people in it, and 8 of them have last names that begin with A through F, and 12 are between G and K, and then we've got 6 here and 10 there. All right, so I think that's 36. Yeah, it's 36. You might notice this table looks ugly right now, and it's going to continue to look ugly for a little while. And then so just good table principles are get all your data in first and then make it look nice after. And so that's what I'm going to do. It's just going to look like a plain white box for a little while I'm putting data in, and then we're going to make it look nice afterwards. So relative frequency. So like I said, frequency, just however many, just raw number in that category. Relative frequency is the percentage in that category. This is, if you watch the last video, this is the same thing as proportion. Relative frequency literally just means percent in that category. You can also do it in fractions if you want, 8 out of 36. It's usually better to do it in percentages or decimals, which tells me I should probably get a calculator up here. So let's do that. All right, so I got my calculator up. You can't see it, I know, but it's there. So we're going to do 8 out of 36 is 22.2%. So instead of 8 out of 36, I'm going to write it as 22.2%. And then we got 12 out of 36 is presumably going to be 33.3%. 6 out of 36 is 16.7%. 10 out of 36, I don't know that one off the top of my head. 10 out of 36 is 27.8%. 27.8%. And then, of course, the total is always going to be 100%. All right, so that's relative frequency, is the percentage falling into that category. Cumulative frequency is the total up to that point. So in the first cell here, I've had a total of 8 up through F. So 8 here. Now I want to know how many I have up through K, right? So that's going to be this and this added together, so 20. And then now I want everything through R. So it's going to be the first 3 added together, which is 26, and then 36. So what I'm doing is I'm just adding up, the first one here, the first 2 for here, the first 3 for here, and then the first 4 for there, obviously. And of course, the total overall is 36. That's cumulative frequency. You accumulate the total as you go down. Then cumulative relative frequency is going to do pretty much what you would expect. It's just going to add up the relative frequencies. So that's what we're going to do. So this is 22.2%, and this one is going to be 55.5%. And then we're going to add 16.7 to that and get, so that's 72.2%. Just one percentage sign, it's fine. And then then we're going to add up to get 100% here. So it's exactly like the cumulative frequency, except it's for relative frequency. So it's cumulative relative frequency. So 100%. And that's what those things are. So I want to talk a little bit about design and good design philosophy. Now, interestingly, your computer actually will do some amount of designing for you. We've got some design options and layout options for this table to make it look like you want. I want to not use those right now, not because they're not good. They actually are pretty good, but just because I want to talk about what good design means. So good design means making the visuals of the table or whatever you're designing accentuate the properties that you want to accentuate, right? You want to use the visuals to help people's brains absorb the information in the table. So a few ways you can do that. Number one, you can differentiate things that have different functions by giving them different visuals. So I'm going to do that. Things that are different here, the headers, the column headers here, the row headers here, and the total are all functionally different than the data in the data in the middle of the table, right? There's my data. I want the data to look different than the headers, row headers, column headers, and totals. I want to make them all look different. So things that function the same, the row headers and column headers are kind of similar, right? They tell you which category you are looking at. So I want to make those look pretty similar, not necessarily exactly the same, right? Because there's a difference between what the last names are and then what the frequencies are telling you, right? Those aren't exactly the same thing, but the headers themselves have similar properties. So I'm going to make them look similar, but not the same. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to make the row header or the column headers here. I'm going to fill this up. Sorry, my zoom is really in the way here. All right, so I'm going to shade this. I like making a nice consistent color scheme. So for instance, I usually use blue just because it's kind of soothing and just generally, basically everybody likes blue. And so I will use things within this column here, just various shades of blue to set things off. You could also do the same with any color. It actually doesn't really matter which color you choose, just as long as you make a consistent choice. So I usually like to do like this as my header now, or as my fill. So when I do this, now that makes this very hard to read. So I'm going to turn the text white by going here. So this is the font color, the text color, and I'm just going to make that white. And so now it stands out nicely. It's when I unhighlight it, you can see it looks really good. Now that is, it's a good start. I think we can make them look more similar. I usually use bold plus italicize to make something look like that, and then make it a little bit bigger, like 14. Okay, great. Now, this is pretty nice. It looks okay so far. It looks a little bit weird in the sense that now my text is like in 2 rows. That's fine as long as you have everything be in 2 rows like that. That's okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and I'm going to center some of these. Is that what I want to do? Yeah, let's center these guys here. Does that look better? Not really. Kind of like that better, to be honest, but I am going to center these. Center all this stuff. And like I said, I want to make these have some similar visual properties because they have some similar functional properties. So I'm going to make I'm going to bold italicize and make these the same size, which was a font size of 14. So now we have some visual similarity between this and this, right? Between the top, and I'm gonna make these a little bit smaller. This annoys me when it's what's going on here, Word? When we have all this blank space, I like to make it look a little bit, you know, snugger, I guess. Okay, so do I like that? I'm going to make it all 1 word wide. Something like this. Now you might say this looks a little funny with last name way up here, and it does. So one thing that you can do is you can center vertically as well. Is that this? I don't think that's this. No, we're going to go to layout and center vertically. Where is that? Like this. There we go. Now everything is vertically centered. Is that the most beautiful graph or most beautiful table ever? No, it's all right, but it's not. You know, the words being so big means that it's going to look weird. Or the words being the headers being so long means that it's going to look weird. And now I wanted to set off the total from the rest of this as well, because the total row has slightly different properties than the stuff in the table. So I'm going to highlight that, and I'm just going to italicize this just to emphasize the slight difference there. And I think, is that all I want to do? Probably. I think this stuff needs to be vertically centered as well, because it's I don't know if it's looking weird to you, but it looks annoyingly weird to me. Yeah, so I want vertical centering on these things so that everything falls in the middle of the cells. So that is okay. I don't love everything I did here. I think maybe it would look a little bit better if this stuff was centered, possibly. And I think these might be a little bit too big and bold. Something like that might be a little bit better. And maybe these guys should be centered like that. I don't know. I'll leave the specific design choices up to you. But basically, a couple points I want to make. Number one, use consistent design philosophy. Use a lot, like if you're going to use blues, use different shades of blue, right? Use dark blues for your fills and for highlighting if you want. Use light blues for very subtle highlighting. Like a thing that you might want to do is you could do like fill this with a very subtle blue, right? With a very light blue, something in this category, just to set off that the totals are different than the other things, right? I think that looks okay. But don't mix like red and blue and green in the same table. That'll look absolutely terrible. It'll look really good if you use things from the same color family. Differentiate things that are functionally different by making them look visually different. And that will tell your brain this thing is different than that thing because they look different. That is a thing that your brain will jump to assume. And if you sort of work with that, you use the fact that people's brains will do that, then you can make your table do what you want it to do without even necessarily having to overtly say it, right? They don't have to read the headers. Like you don't have to read this to know that this is different than that, right? They look different, so they should function differently. And keep things relatively in some amount of proportion. Like don't go crazy big or crazy small with one thing or another, unless you want to make that look really, really different than everything else, right? Like this is, right, that doesn't look great. That's simply too much, right? You want to keep it within reason, like that, right? So something similar. So use similarity to represent functional similarity, use visual similarity to represent functional similarity, visual differences to represent functional differences, keep things relatively in proportion, and have a consistent design ethic, usually expressed in the color scheme, but also in other ways. Like I think it might actually not be a bad idea to make these things blue if you wanted to. I can make those dark blue, and I think that would look pretty good actually, right? As more visual differentiation, and it goes more with the color scheme of the table. One way or another, I don't think that's a big deal, but that's another thing you can do is change colors. And I think I've been rambling on at you enough now, and I will go ahead and stop the video here. So stop sharing, and I will see you guys in the next video.